The first time I realized I might die wasn't when they locked the door. It was when I understood the language they thought I didn't. My name is Amara, and the night everything changed. I was just trying to survive. Cold concrete pressed against my back as I sat in the dimly lit room, wrists still sore from the tight grip of the guards who had dragged me here hours ago. No explanation, no questions, just silence and fear. I wasn't supposed to be here. One wrong turn. One wrong job interview, one wrong building, and suddenly I belonged to a man people whispered about like he wasn't human, the Korean Mafia boss. They called him El the King. I hadn't seen his face yet, but I had felt his presence, heavy, controlling, dangerous. Outside the door, footsteps echoed. Two guards. Their voices were low, sharp, and definitely not Korean, Russian. I froze. Emma Shayana Geutuvia. One of them muttered. My heart skipped. Russian wasn't something I advertised, but growing up in a rough neighborhood, you pick up things. Survival teaches you languages school never could. The other replied. Tonight, he won't return. My breath caught in my throat. They were planning something. Not security, not protection, an assassination. And the target had to be him. The Mafia boss. My mind screamed at me to stay quiet, stay invisible. This wasn't my fight, but something inside me, something stubborn, something human, refused to let it go. Because if I stayed silent, I wouldn't just be a prisoner. I'd be a coward. The lock clicked, the door opened, and for the first time, I saw him. We saw him. He stepped into the room like he owned the air itself. Tall, sharp, calm. Deadly, his dark eyes landed on me, unreadable like he was already calculating my worth. Who are you? His voice was low, controlled. I swallowed hard. This was the man everyone feared. And I was about to tell him he was about to die. I need to tell you something, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort. He didn't move, didn't react, just watched. Make it quick. I hesitated. This could get me killed or worse, ignored. The guards outside, I whispered, they're not loyal to you. Silence. His gaze sharpened. What did you say? They're speaking Russian, I continued, forcing the words out. They said the car is ready, and tonight you won't come back. The room changed. Just like that, the air turned heavy. Dangerous, but not toward me, toward everything else. For a second, I thought he wouldn't believe me, that he'd laugh or have me dragged out. Instead, he stepped closer. Too close. His eyes locked onto mine, searching, dissecting, testing. You understand Russian? He asked quietly. I nodded. A long pause. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled, not warm, not kind, but impressed. Interesting. Before I could react, he turned sharply toward the door. Call them in. My stomach dropped. No, this wasn't what I meant. The door opened again. The two guards stepped inside, confident, unaware, until they saw him, until they felt the shift. What were you discussing? He asked casually. Too casually. Nothing, sir, one replied quickly. A lie. And he knew it. I knew it, and suddenly they knew that I knew it. Their eyes snapped toward me, sharp, suspicious, dangerous. The room tightened. One wrong word, and I'd be dead before I hit the floor. The boss tilted his head slightly. Then, without looking at me, he said, I translate. My heart stopped. He was putting everything on me. If I lied, they'd live. If I told the truth, they'd die. And either way, I might not survive. My lips parted. Time slowed. I heard them say, I began, my voice barely steady, that the car is ready. Silence. The guards shifted. Tense. And? I forced myself to continue. Tonight, you won't come back. The explosion of violence was instant. I didn't even see who moved first. One of the guards reached for his weapon, but he was too slow. Gunshots. Sharp. Loud. Final. I flinched as both bodies hit the ground. Just like that. Gone. The ringing in my ears drowned everything else. Until footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming toward me, I looked up. He was staring at me again. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. Not suspicion, not anger. Something far more dangerous. Interest. You just saved my life, he said quietly. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because the way he was looking at me didn't feel like gratitude. It felt like ownership. And then he said the words that changed everything. You're not leaving. Leaving. The words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like a decision already made. My chest tightened as I stared at him, trying to understand what that meant for me. Saved his life, and now I was trapped even deeper inside it. I didn't ask to stay. I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. For a moment, I thought I had crossed a line. But instead of anger, a faint, almost amused expression touched his face. No, he replied calmly. But now you're involved. Behind him, the bodies were already being dragged away. No panic, no chaos, just routine. Like betrayal and death were part of the daily schedule here, I swallowed. What happens to people who get involved? I asked. His gaze held mine, unblinking. That depends, he said, on how useful they are. A chill ran down my spine. So that was it. I wasn't a person here. I was an asset. Or a liability. And in places like this, liabilities didn't last long. Come, he said suddenly, turning toward the door. I hesitated. I'm not one of your people. He paused, glancing back at me. Not yet. The way he said it made something in my stomach drop. But I followed. Because right now, I didn't have a choice. The hallway outside was long, quiet, and lined with men who looked just as dangerous as the ones who had just died. But something was different. They weren't watching him with fear. They were watching him with loyalty. Real loyalty. Which meant something important. The betrayal wasn't everywhere, but it was close enough to kill him. And now, close enough to kill me. We stepped into a large room filled with screens, maps, and people moving quickly between them. It looked less like a criminal hideout and more like a war room. Everyone stopped when he entered. Eyes lowered. Respect. Absolute. This is where I work, he said without looking at me. I didn't respond. I was too busy trying to understand how I ended up here. A girl who walked in for a job interview, now standing inside a Mafia command center. A name, he said. Amara. He nodded slightly, like he was storing it somewhere. From now on, Amara, you stay close. My heart skipped. That wasn't part of the deal, I said quickly. Now he turned fully toward me. There was no deal, he replied. His voice wasn't raised, but it didn't need to be. You overheard a plan to kill me. You exposed it. That puts a target on your back whether you stay or not. I knew he was right, and I hated it. So what? I just live here now? I asked. For now, he said. For how long? He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at one of the men nearby. Find out how many more are compromised. The man nodded and rushed off. I watched him, then looked back at the boss. You don't trust your own people. I trust patterns, he said. And right now, the pattern says someone very close to me wants me dead. A silence fell between us. Then, before I could stop myself, I said, why? His eyes shifted back to mine, and for the first time there was something human in them. A power, he said simply. Of course. Power, it was always power. Hours passed, or maybe it was less. Time felt strange here. I was given a room, not locked this time, but guarded. The kind of freedom that wasn't really freedom. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. They were still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from realization. I had stepped into something irreversible, a world where every decision could cost a life, and somehow I had already taken one. A soft knock on the door pulled me out of my thoughts. Before I could respond, it opened. He walked in, alone. I stood up immediately, unsure what to expect. You should eat, he said, placing a tray on the table. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. I'm not hungry. That wasn't the question. What's the question? I almost smiled despite myself. Almost. You always this controlling? I asked. A pause. Then, yes. At least he was honest. I sat down slowly and picked at the food. He didn't leave. He just stood there watching. You don't trust me, I said. No. Fair. Then why keep me close? His answer came without hesitation. Because you told the truth when it could have gotten you killed. I looked up at him. And that matters to you? Something flickered in his expression. More than it should. The room went quiet again. But this time, it felt different. Less like a cage. More like something forming, something neither of us understood yet. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like something waiting to happen. So I got up, opened the door slightly. The guard outside glanced at me, but didn't stop me as I stepped into the hallway. Maybe I was allowed to walk, or maybe they wanted to see where I'd go. Either way, I kept moving. That's when I heard it. Voices, low, urgent, around the corner. I slowed, staying close to the wall. Hi. She's the problem, someone whispered. My breath caught. They know because of her. Another voice. Colder. Then we remove her too. My heart slammed against my ribs. They weren't done. The betrayal wasn't over. And now, I wasn't just a witness. I was a target. A sudden hand grabbed my wrist. I gasped, and before I could scream, I was pulled into the shadows. A hand covered my mouth. A quiet, his voice, the boss. My pulse raced as he held me there, listening. The voices continued just around the corner. Close, too close. His grip tightened slightly, not hurting, but protective. Like he already knew, like he had been watching, waiting. When the footsteps finally faded, he slowly removed his hand. "You shouldn't be wandering alone," he said quietly. I turned to face him, my voice shaking. "They're planning something again, and this time it's me." His jaw tightened. "I know." My eyes widened. "You know, I wanted to see who would move next," he said. Anger flared inside me. "So I'm bait now?" His silence answered everything. For a moment, I just stared at him. Hurt, angry, confused. "Oh, do I look like someone who signed up for this?" I whispered. Something shifted in his expression. Guilt. Real, unexpected guilt. "Eno," he said quietly. Before I could react, a loud noise echoed down the hallway. Gunfire. Close. Too close. Everything changed in an instant. He grabbed my hand. Stay with me. And this time, it didn't feel like an order. Why? It felt like the only way to survive. Gunfire ripped through the silence like thunder splitting the sky. My ears rang as the first shot echoed, then another. Closer this time. Too close. The hallway that felt like a prison moments ago suddenly became a battlefield. He didn't hesitate. His hand tightened around mine as he pulled me forward, moving fast, precise, like this was a language his body understood better than words. "Stay behind me," he ordered. But there was something different in his voice now, not just control. Urgency. Real urgency. Real urgency. We turned the corner, and chaos exploded. 2 men at the far end of the corridor opened fire the second they saw him. Bullets slammed into the walls, sparks flying, concrete chipping. I gasped as he shoved me behind a pillar, his body shielding mine without hesitation. He returned fire instantly. Controlled. Efficient. Deadly. One of the attackers dropped. The other ducked back, disappearing into the shadows. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. "This wasn't supposed to happen tonight," I whispered, half to myself. "It was always going to happen," he replied sharply. "You just moved the timeline." That hit harder than the gunfire. Before I could respond, he grabbed my wrist again. A move. We ran, not away, but deeper inside. That's when I realized something terrifying. He wasn't escaping. He was heading somewhere specific. "Where are we going?" I asked breathlessly. "A safe route." Safe. The word felt fragile in a place like this. We reached a heavy steel door. He punched in a code. Fast, precise. It slid open just enough for us to slip inside before slamming shut behind us. Darkness. Then dim emergency lights flickered on. A narrow passage. Hidden. My breathing slowed slightly, but my hands were still shaking. "How many?" I asked. "Enough," he said, not comforting, not even close. We moved quickly through the tunnel, footsteps echoing softly. For a moment there was silence. No gunshots, no shouting, just the sound of us. Alive and running. "You used me." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He didn't answer immediately, which told me everything. "You knew they'd come after me," I continued, my voice tight. "You kept me close so they'd reveal themselves." Still silence. Then, yes. I stopped walking. He took 2 more steps before realizing I wasn't beside him anymore. Slowly, he turned. In the dim light, his face looked different. Less untouchable, more real. "You don't get to just say that like it's nothing," I said, anger rising in my chest. I could have died. His gaze didn't waver. "I know. That's it." "That's all you have to say?" A pause. Then something shifted. I calculated the risk. I laughed bitterly. "Of course you did, and I stayed close enough to intervene." My chest tightened, so I was never in control. "No," he said quietly. Not in that moment. The honesty should have made me feel better. It didn't. It made everything heavier. "Lynn, what am I to you?" "Oh." I asked, my voice softer now, but more dangerous. For the first time, he didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched mine like he was trying to find something he didn't have a name for. "Oh, that's what I'm trying to understand," he said finally. And somehow, that was worse. Worse. A distant explosion shook the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. Instinctively, I moved closer to him. He noticed. Didn't comment. just adjusted his position slightly, so I was shielded again. We kept moving, faster now. The tunnel sloped downward, leading us deeper beneath the building. The air grew colder, heavier. How far does this go? I asked. Far enough. Again with the vague answers. But right now, I didn't argue, because the truth was, I didn't want to be anywhere else. Not out there, not alone. We reached another door, this one older, rusted. He pushed it open. Fresh air hit my face. I hadn't realized how suffocating it felt inside until that moment. We stepped out into the night, an empty alley, quiet, too quiet. For a second, it felt like we had made it, like we had escaped. Then, a click behind us. I froze. He didn't. Slowly, he turned. 3 men stood at the end of the alley, guns raised, waiting. They knew the exit, I whispered. Yes, he said, no panic. Just calculation. Always calculation. You stay behind me, he repeated. No, I said suddenly. He glanced at me, surprised. If I stay behind you, I'm just a target, I continued. Tell me what to do. For a brief moment, something like approval flickered in his eyes. On my signal, move left. Don't stop. I got it. The men ahead shifted slightly. One of them smirked. A boss, he called out mockingly. You should have stayed inside. Big mistake. Because the second he spoke, he gave away just enough distraction. And now, everything exploded again. Gunfire, shouting, chaos. I ran left just like he said. Didn't look back, couldn't. Shots rang out behind me. Too many. Then silence. I stopped, turned. My breath caught. 2 of the men were down. The third was aiming directly at him, and he didn't see it. Time slowed. I didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't hesitate. Look out! I ran back. Straight toward him. The gun fired. But not at him. At me. Pain exploded through my side as I stumbled forward, crashing into him. His arms caught me instantly. The world blurred. Distant. Fading. No. His voice. For the first time, not controlled. Not calm. Broken. I tried to speak. Couldn't. My vision darkened. But I felt it. His hand pressing against the wound. Trying to stop the blood. Trying to keep me here. Stay with me? He said urgently. He had said that before. But this time it sounded different, not like an order, like a plea. I forced my eyes open slightly. You said stay? I whispered weakly. His grip tightened. I didn't mean like this. A faint, painful smile touched my lips. Still, saved you. His expression changed completely. Something raw, something real, something he couldn't hide anymore. We're not dying, he said, not to me, to himself. Like he was refusing to accept it. Darkness crept in at the edges of my vision. His voice was the last thing I heard. Amara, stay with me. And for the first time since this all began, the ruthless Mafia king sounded afraid. The world didn't disappear all at once. It slipped. Like sand between fingers. Sound went first, gunfire fading into a dull echo like it belonged to another life. Then the pain, sharp burning, then distant like it wasn't even mine anymore. But one thing stayed, his voice. Amara, stay with me. It wasn't cold. It wasn't controlled. It was breaking. And somehow that was the thing that pulled me back. Darkness pressed in, heavy, suffocating, but I fought it. Not because I was strong, because I didn't want that voice to disappear. When I opened my eyes again, everything was different. Bright light, too bright. Clean air, too clean. For a second, I didn't understand where I was. Then the pain returned. Slow, deep, real. A soft gasp left my lips as I tried to move, but something stopped me. A hand. Warm. Firm. Don't. His voice again. But this time controlled. Barely. I turned my head slightly. He was there. Sitting beside me. Closer than I expected. Closer than someone like him should be. You're alive, I whispered. It was supposed to be a joke. But my voice came out weak. Fragile. His jaw tightened slightly. That wasn't a risk you were supposed to take. I almost smiled. So you admit I wasn't part of the plan. A pause, then a no. Honest again. Always honest when it mattered most. I swallowed, my throat dry. Where are we? Are we? A safe house? Of course, always another hidden place. Another layer, another secret. How long? 2 days. My eyes widened slightly. He lost a lot of blood, he cut in quietly. And you wouldn't stay conscious. Something in the way he said it made my chest tighten. You stayed? I asked before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, yes, I looked at him properly now. Really looked. He hadn't slept. Lit in properly. I could see it in his eyes, in the tension in his shoulders, in the way his hands still hadn't left mine. You should have left, I said softly. Too dangerous. His gaze snapped to mine instantly. I decide what's dangerous. There it was. The control, the power, the man everyone feared. But underneath it, something else, something quiet, something he didn't know how to hide anymore. You almost died, he added, his voice lower now. I held his gaze. So did you. That hit. I saw it. The shift. The realization. For the first time since this all started, we weren't talking about power, or control, or survival. We were talking about each other. Days passed, slowly, carefully. Like the world outside had paused just long enough for us to breathe. The safe house was quiet, hidden far from the chaos, far from the betrayal. Just wall, silence. And the two of us, I learned things about him, not from questions. He didn't answer those, but from moments, the way he always checked the doors twice, the way he never sat with his back to an open space, the way he barely slept. But when he did, it was light, like he expected danger even in dreams. And him? He learned things about me, the way I refused help until I physically couldn't stand, the way I still tried to joke even when it hurt, the way I didn't look at him with fear. Not anymore. One night, I found him standing by the window, watching the darkness outside, always watching. You ever stop? I asked quietly. He didn't turn. A stop what? A thinking like everything is a threat. A pause. Then, a no. Honest? Of course. I stepped closer, ignoring the dull pain in my side. You saved me, he said suddenly. He blinked. That's not how I remember. How you moved without thinking, he continued. Oh, that's not strategy. How I crossed my arms slightly. Or maybe I just didn't want to watch someone die. He finally turned, his eyes locked onto mine. And that's exactly why it matters. The air shifted, something deeper. Something dangerous in a completely different way. A people like me, he said slowly, we don't get saved. I tilted my head slightly. Maybe that's because you don't let anyone try. A long silence followed. Heavy, but not uncomfortable. Just real. The next morning, everything changed again. I called Horta. Short, sharp, and from the way his expression shifted, bad news. What is it? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then, they found us. My stomach dropped. How? It doesn't matter. It did, but not right now. How long do we have? Not long, of course not. It was never easy, never simple. I pushed myself up from the bed, ignoring the pain, ignoring the weakness. We're not moving, he said immediately. Yes, I am. You're injured, and you're outnumbered. Silence. Then you were not part of this. I stepped closer. I was the moment I opened my mouth. That hit harder than anything else, because it was true. There was no going back, not for me, not for him. A distant sound echoed outside. Engines. More than one. They were here. He grabbed his weapon, checked it, calm, focused. But this time he looked at me differently, not like an asset, not like a liability, like someone he didn't want to lose. Stay behind me, he said again. I shook my head slightly. You already know I won't. A faint breath escaped him, not quite a laugh, not quite frustration, something in between, then stay close. And just like that, we stepped back into the war. Together, the engines outside didn't stop. They multiplied. 1 car, 2, 3, then silence. The kind of silence that comes right before everything breaks. He didn't rush, didn't panic. He just checked his weapon one last time, then looked at me. Not like before, not like a boss. Not like a man calculating odds. Like someone memorizing a moment. If anything happens. He started. No, I cut in immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. Amara, no backup plans where I disappear and you stay, I said firmly. We're not doing that. A pause. Then something unexpected. He nodded. Stay with me, he said quietly. This time, I didn't argue. The first shot shattered the window. Glass exploded inward as we dropped low, moving instantly. He grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a solid wall as bullets tore through the room. They're not here to capture, I whispered. No, he replied. They're here to finish it. Another wave of gunfire. Closer now. Faster. They were moving in. How many? I asked. Enough. Always that answer. But this time I understood it. Enough to kill him. Enough to make sure there were no survivors. We moved through the house quickly, room to room, keeping low, staying unpredictable. I wasn't thinking anymore, not about fear. Not about pain, just movement, just survival, just him. At the back exit, he stopped suddenly. Something wasn't right. I saw it in his eyes. Too still, too quiet. Waiting, he said. A trap. Of course it was. They know how you think, I said slowly. His gaze shifted slightly. Yes. And then it clicked. This isn't random, I continued. This isn't just betrayal. I looked at him. This is someone who knows you. A long silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then, a voice. Behind us. You're finally catching up. We both turned, and everything stopped, because standing there, calm, untouched, was someone he trusted, not just trusted, someone close. Someone who didn't belong on the other side of a gun. I was wondering how long it would take, the man said with a faint smile. My chest tightened. You, I whispered. The boss didn't speak, didn't move. But I felt it, the shift in him. The realization, the confirmation. You built everything so perfectly, the man continued. A power, loyalty, control. He tilted his head slightly. But you forgot one thing. Silence. People want more, the boss finally spoke, low, cold. You were never supposed to be part of this. The man smiled. That's the problem. I was always part of it, just not the way you wanted. My heart pounded. This wasn't just betrayal. This was personal. Deep. How long? The boss asked. No anger. Just a question. Long enough, the man replied. Long enough to watch you become untouchable. A pause. Long enough to want it for myself. There it was. Power. Always power. But this time, it wasn't distant. It wasn't abstract. It was right here, pointing a gun. You use them, I said suddenly. The man's eyes flicked toward me. Mild curiosity. Haha. The guards, the ambush, everything. He smiled slightly. And you weren't supposed to matter? I felt that, but I didn't look away. Yet here you are, he added. The boss stepped slightly in front of me. Instinct. Automatic. You should have stayed out of it, the traitor said calmly. I tried, I replied. A faint chuckle. A wrong place. Wrong time. A no, I said quietly. A right choice. Something in his expression shifted. Just slightly. But enough. You think this ends with you walking out? The boss asked. The man shrugged. I think this ends with you not walking out. Gun raised. Steady. Certain. Everything slowed. I could feel it. This was the moment. The final line. No more running, no more hiding, just truth, just choice. The boss didn't move, didn't reach for his weapon, didn't break eye contact. Do it, he said. My breath caught. No, that wasn't right. Something was wrong. Wait, I started, but it was too late. The gun fired, time shattered, but not the way anyone expected, because he moved, not back, not away, forward, and the shot missed its mark. By inches. In that split second, everything changed. The boss closed the distance instantly, disarming him with brutal precision. The gun hit the floor. A struggle. Fast. Violent. I didn't think. I moved. Picked up the weapon. Hands shaking. Heart racing. And suddenly, I was the one holding the power. A stop. My voice echoed louder than I expected. Both of them froze. The traitor looked at me, then at the gun, then he smiled. You won't shoot, he said calmly. He was so sure, so certain. Because people like me don't pull triggers, don't end lives, don't cross that line. My hands trembled. He was right. I didn't belong in this world, didn't belong in this moment. But then I looked at him, at the man who had lied, manipulated, destroyed everything. Then I looked at the one beside me, the man who should have been heartless, but wasn't. Not completely, not anymore. And I realized something. This wasn't about becoming like them. This was about choosing who I wasn't. I don't have to shoot, I said, quietly. Confusion flickered in his eyes, just for a second, and that was enough. The boss moved. Fast, decisive, final. The fight ended before it began again. Silence fell. Heavy, complete, the kind of silence that doesn't leave room for anything else. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, it was over. Not with noise, not with chaos. Just over. Later, the world felt different. Not safer, not simpler, but clearer. The storm had passed. And what remained was real. I stood outside, the cool air brushing against my skin, grounding me. He stepped beside me, quiet. No guards, no walls, just us. You could have left, he said after a while. I didn't look at him. I know. A pause. Why didn't you? I thought about it. About everything. The fear. The chaos. The choices. Then I answered honestly. Because you didn't. Silence again, but not empty. Full. Heavy with everything we hadn't said. Everything we didn't need to. After a moment, he spoke again. You changed things. I shook my head slightly. No. I turned to look at him. You did. For once, he didn't argue, didn't deny it, didn't deflect. He just looked at me. And in his eyes, there was no power, no control, no distance. Just truth, raw, unfiltered, human. It felt unfamiliar, almost fragile, like something that could break if either of us said the wrong thing. The air outside carried a chill that settled into my skin, but I didn't move. I stood there, arms loosely at my sides, staring into the distance as if the night could somehow make sense of everything that had just happened. Behind us, the safe house was no longer safe, just another place marked by betrayal, another place that would be abandoned and erased like it never existed. And yet, for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like running. I felt still. He hadn't left my side. Not once. I could feel his presence more than see it, steady and grounded like a force that refused to disappear even when everything else had fallen apart. For a man who had built his life on control, on distance, on never needing anyone, he was standing closer than necessary, closer than someone like him ever allowed. And it made something shift quietly inside me. "You're thinking too much," he said finally, his voice low, almost softer than I had ever heard it. I let out a slow breath, my lips curving faintly without humor. That's kind of what happens when people try to kill you. A pause. "People have been trying to kill me for years," he replied. I turned my head slightly, glancing at him. "Yeah, but not like this." That landed because we both knew the difference. This wasn't business. This wasn't enemies on the outside. This was someone who had stood close, spoken calmly, earned trust, and then tried to destroy him from within. That kind of betrayal didn't just disappear when the threat was gone. It stayed. It settled deep. And somehow, I understood that now. "I heard different," he said suddenly. I frowned, slightly said sudden. "Quink, you've said that before." No, he shook his head faintly, his gaze distant for a moment, like he was choosing the words carefully. "Oh, I didn't mean it like this before." Something in his tone made my chest tighten just a little. Then what do you mean now?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. That wasn't unusual. He had always taken his time with things that mattered, like words were weapons, and he didn't waste them. But this felt different. This felt uncertain. "You see things before they happen," he said finally. "You act without calculation, without fear of consequence." I almost laughed, but it didn't come out right. "Oh, that's not strength. That's survival." "I know," he said, looking at me now fully. "That's something I don't have." The honesty in that moment didn't feel like weakness. It felt like something far more dangerous. Because a man like him admitting something like that, it meant the walls were cracking, and I didn't know what to do with that. "Oh, so what happens now?" I asked after a moment, my voice quieter, more grounded. It was a simple question, but it carried everything. The past few days, the danger, the choices, the fact that I didn't belong in his world. And yet somehow I was still standing in it. He didn't look away this time. "That depends on you." I blinked, caught off guard. "On me?" "You can walk away," he said. No one will follow you. No one will touch you." I searched his face carefully, trying to see if there was a catch, a hidden meaning, some unspoken condition. There wasn't. For the first time, he meant it. Asked, a slight shift in his expression. "I stay." Of course he did. This was his world, his responsibility, his war. And I wasn't part of that. I knew that. He knew that. He knew that. So why did it feel like something was pulling me in the opposite direction? "Things don't just go back to normal after something like this," I said slowly. "No," he agreed. "They don't." Another silence fell between us, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we hadn't figured out yet. I should have left. Every logical part of me knew that. This was my chance, my way out. No more danger, no more guns, no more nights wondering if I would wake up the next morning. A normal life, safe, simple, mine. But instead of stepping away, I stayed exactly where I was, and I hated how natural it felt. "You said I changed things," I said quietly, my eyes drifting back toward the empty street. "You did." Then maybe you don't get to go back either." He didn't respond immediately, but I felt it. That shift again. That quiet realization settling in because I wasn't wrong. Something had changed. Not just around us, inside us. And there was no undoing that. "You don't belong here," he said after a long pause. I nodded slightly. "I know, but you're still here." I let out a soft breath. "Yeah, why?" That question again. Simple, direct, impossible to answer without saying something real. I hesitated. "Then, because you didn't let me die." It wasn't everything, but it was enough. His expression changed just slightly. Not dramatic, not obvious, but real. "Then you didn't let me die," he replied. A strange, quiet balance settled between us. Not debt, not obligation, something else. Something equal. The days that followed didn't feel like the ones before. There were no alarms, no sudden attacks, no whispered plans of betrayal in the shadows. The chaos had ended, at least for now. But the aftermath, that was something else entirely. I watched him rebuild, not loudly, not dramatically, but carefully. Decisions made in silence, moves calculated but no longer cold. There was something different in the way he handled things now. Less distance, less detachment, more awareness. And sometimes I caught him watching me, not in suspicion, not in control, just watching. Like he was still trying to understand something he couldn't quite define. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted everything in soft gold, I found him standing alone again. That seemed to be his habit. Always alone when things slowed down. Free. You ever get tired of carrying everything? I asked, stepping beside him. He didn't look surprised. Oh no. I raised an eyebrow slightly. That's not human. A faint breath left him. Not quite a laugh. Maybe I'm not. I shook my head softly. I know, you are. You are. That made him glance at me, just for a second. But you don't let yourself be. A longer silence this time. Then, maybe I didn't have a reason to. The words were quiet, but they hit harder than anything else, because now, maybe he did. I didn't notice when it happened. When staying stopped feeling temporary, when leaving stopped feeling like the obvious choice, when his world started feeling like something I was part of. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to stand beside him without hesitation. Enough to speak without fear. Enough to see him not as the ruthless king everyone else saw, but as something far more complicated and far more human. "You're not walking away," he said one night, not as a question. I met his gaze. A no, a pause. Then, neither are you. For the first time, he didn't argue. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just survival anymore. This wasn't just chance or circumstance. This was choice, and we had both made it, without saying it out loud, without needing to. The world around us was still dangerous, still unpredictable, still filled with shadows and risks and enemies waiting for the right moment. But somehow, standing there beside him, it didn't feel like something to run from anymore. It felt like something we would face together.